Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Live at the Waterhole on this Wednesday morning. We're starting today at Old Donyo in southeast Kenya. My name is Jan Herbst. I'm the owner of this voice, and I'll be your presenter for today. Just a quick reminder that this is a live and interactive experience. We love to hear from you, so send your comments, questions through or on our app or website. The details are displayed on the screen below. Okay, so today's theme, I want to find out what your favorite sighting is on Live at the Waterhole. So let's relive, live and share the absolute favorite moments from the show. Maybe it's a special predator encounter, or a rare bird dropping by for a drink, or even some elephants playing in the mud. What made that sighting stand out for you? So please share your comments so we can start the discussion. So we have a giraffe splaying its legs, doing a downward dog for us, a yoga stance. Get some blood flowing through its body. Of course, they're very vulnerable in this position. Very vulnerable to predators, because it takes a while for them to get back up to their standing stance. Of course, they have a very special adaptation. They've got a valve which prevents the blood flowing to the brains in the jugular vein. And of course, we have an eland over there as well. Just passing the giraffe in the background. Some zebras vigorously flicking their tails, trying to ward off any potential flies. And that giraffe is busy grooming itself. Very relaxed Wednesday morning there at Old Donyo. Doesn't seem like too much is phasing these giraffe and zebra at the moment. They look very relaxed. You can tell with their body language that they're quite relaxed. Just drinking calmly. They don't look too alert. So Mr. Elemental says, greetings to the owner of the voice, Johan. Thank you, Mr. Elemental. I'm glad you enjoyed that little joke over there. So Laura Lyon says, absolutely amazing. Definitely amazing to be able to see these wonderful, picturesque African scenes coming to us live in our homes. So Wendy H says, hello Johan, good to hear from you in the chilly PE. I love everything about Live at the Waterhole, especially Old Donyo and Camelthorne with the zebra migration. Looking forward to today's show. Thank you, Wendy H. I'm also looking forward to today's show. Yeah, it's lovely to see Old Donyo. Old Donyo never fails to produce the goods in terms of animal sightings. Always some really nice displays of zebra, eland, oryx, giraffe, and a number of other species. So Mr. Elemental says, I like it anytime you can see Mount Kilimanjaro at Aldonho. So in the few times that I've done this show, I've only seen Kilimanjaro twice, and that was this last Saturday. So it is a very rare occurrence, it seems, to see the magnificent mountain in the background. But it is always special when you do get to see it. But even just this site on its own is very special. Seeing these umbrella trees, these acacias in the background. It's just the scenes that you imagine when you think of Africa, just these beautiful picturesque scenes with these wonderful umbrella thorns in the background. And you can see an umbrella thorn poking out just above the waterhole, breaking out that outline, probably just underneath Kilimanjaro, which you can't see at the moment. So we've got a male giraffe over here. You can tell it's a male if you look at the ossicones on its head, those horns above the eyes, and they're very thick in the males, and they lack tufts of hair on the top of them. So that's due to the males' fighting habits. They fight for females, and when they're fighting each other, that hair, due to the friction, tends to wear down and wear off. It's quite interesting to see the giraffe create such small pellets for its dung. Well, seeing as that giraffe and everyone else doesn't really want to be in the picture, I think let's see what's going on at Meno. Okay, nice little dazzle of zebra in the foreground, and then some elephants slowly moving off there in the background. And I was reading up a bit about Meno, and so the name is actually a Setswana word or it's a name which means teeth of the crocodile. So Kwena is a crocodile, and so it's called that because of the large number of crocodiles which frequent this area, which along the Butete River. Of course, the competition would be quite fierce for the little spots of water amongst the crocodiles and the hippos during this drier season. It looks like there's an elephant sort of laying down over there. So it's probably just lying down because it's a very hot day and just trying to conserve its energy. So Gary is saying, my highlight was seeing 1 ton for the first time. So 1 ton is that big elephant bull. I think it's there at Aldonho, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but so a big elephant bull. So thanks for sharing that, Gary. I haven't seen, I've heard of the name before, but I haven't seen it. I just received an update that it is correct, so yes, 1 ton, that big elephant bull at Aldonho. So Sally says, my top sighting has to be when we had the live kill at Rosie's Pan with the wild dogs and they took down the pregnant impala. Wow, that's a very impressive sighting. It's not too often that we see predators on the show, at least not when I've been doing the show, but it's always quite thrilling to see a kill, and especially wild dogs have got a very unique strategy in which they use to take down their prey. So they would try and tire their prey out by running them down or tiring them to exhaustion, and then they sort of bite off pieces of their prey, which many people think is quite cruel, but it is the animal kingdom, and it's the way that things have been happening for many, many centuries before we were civilized. So
this unfolds in front of you.
The bush, full of beauty, wonder, and absolute chaos. And now, all that madness has its own show. It's called a Wild Bush Week. The countdown of the most outrageous, heart-stopping, and sometimes downright ridiculous wildlife moments of the week. Lions throwing their weight around. Hyenas gate-crashing the buffet. Leopards doing, well, leopardy things. Each week, it's a fresh reel of safari gold, a mix of drama,
She's just got an impala, everybody.
danger, and a healthy dose of laughter. So, if you fancy a highlight show with bite, and I don't mean just the animals, tune in to a Wild Bush Week. You bring the tea, and we'll bring the tusks, tails, and teeth.
So Spasyankov also mentions the wild dog kill at Rosie's Pan, and Spas is also asking where else we can see wild dogs. In the show, I think at the Willifant's West Camp, which is Rosie's Pan, of course, where you saw the wild dogs make the kill, and then at Madikwe, you could also probably see wild dogs. And I'm not too sure about the other locations, but definitely at Madikwe and at Willifant's West Game Reserve, I'm sure you could see. So 2 Discos Dave says 1 ton is always good. Saw a croc nearly take down a wildebeest at Tau not too long after I started watching about a year ago. So it is definitely very exciting, very thrilling to see predators take down their prey. Gets the blood rushing, coursing through the veins, and it's just something that is quite unusual for us to see, in our daily lives. So I think it's always quite an adrenaline rush to see. Mr. Elemental says that one of their most memorable sightings was seeing a gruesome hippo fight at Kruger Shalati about a year ago. So they can be extremely aggressive, those hippos, and with their very large incisor teeth, or shall I say their canine teeth, they are able to inflict quite some damage on their enemies or on their competition. So Monique Cherry has been a member for a year. She says, I love founders and Nkoro. So thank you, Monique, for sharing. Founders is always special with the rhino sightings there, the white rhino sightings. And Nkoro is also very special. Had some very interesting sightings over there. Nara is saying that her favorite live at the waterhole moment was when Tammy gave birth live on the show. So that's the cheetah that gave birth at the Hoedspruit Endangered Species Center. And I can imagine, because that's also a very rare sighting, very seldom that you'd see that, because cheetahs are, of course, an endangered species, and very difficult to spot in the wild, even in the places where they occur, like the Kruger National Park. I've only seen cheetah once in the Kruger National Park itself, but on one of the game reserves that I was working in, which was quite close to the Kruger, I was fortunate enough to be able to track cheetahs on a daily basis, so I got to know the cheetahs quite well. So I was very fortunate to have that experience. So, seeing as there's not too much activity over here, let's see what's happening at Tembe. Maybe we've got a bit more action over there. Okay, so we're now at Tembe Elephant Park in Maputaland in northern KwaZulu-Natal, located between Mozambique and Eswatini, and we've got some, it looks like impala to the left of the waterhole here, and then of course the park's namesake, some elephants in the background. And it also looks like we've got, no, sorry, I thought that might be a nyala, but in the background there, but it's just some more elephants. You can see how that elephant over there is using its feet to kick up some dirt to loosen the soil and the sand, so that it can layer itself with that sand to protect it against the sun, and of course against those pesky parasites. Okay, there we can see the nyala, the male and the female in the background there. The male, of course, the dark grey one that's following the female, which is a reddish brown, and they've got those white stripes along the flank. And you can see that the male is pursuing that female, maybe she's in heat. There's another nyala bull in the background, such beautiful, beautiful antelope. And very water dependent. It's not often that you'll find them more than 5 kilometers away from a waterhole or from a river. Often you'll see nyala hanging around camps in the Kruger and some game reserves as a relatively tame antelope, but they can be very fearsome if they're cornered, just like any wild animal. So Billy Judd is asking, have wild dogs tried taking down elephant calves? And I've never seen it myself before, but I'd imagine a very weak elephant mother, elephant cow that isn't able to defend its baby might fall victim to, or the calf might fall victim to the wild dogs, but it's very, very unlikely that they would try, because of course elephant can inflict some serious damage. Could probably flick the wild dog into probably 3 meters or so into the air. So I think it's very unlikely, but I do know that lions, there's some lions in Botswana that have taken down some elephant calves and some younger elephants. So, and I think that's one of the few places in the world where you'll find that lions actually have been able to take down elephant. AJ says, looks so peaceful. It really does. Wouldn't it just be wonderful to be right there, right now, just chilling there at the waterhole, so forgetting about all the stress of work and day-to-day life. So absolutely, AJ, thanks for your comment. So my favorite encounter, or sorry, my favorite sighting on the show would have to be on Saturday. We saw a hyena busy bathing in the waterhole. So that was quite a unique sighting for me, quite a special one, because I do really love hyenas, and I think they're an incredibly misunderstood species, because they get a bit of a bad reputation from movies like The Lion King, where they're the villains. So, and actually, oftentimes you'll find that lions will chase hyenas away from their kills. So.
My name is Amy, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently.
Phula phula mazwi omoya indlovu silula ngengoma livakala phezulu.
And that's it for this morning's drive.
She's just got to impala everybody.
And we're going to be heading out and seeing what animals we can find.
We are here with a male leopard.
Of those horns. And so Pemspook are not very, oh, something spooked them there. They're definitely very unhappy about something that's maybe lurking in the bushes over there. There's the excitement that we're looking for. I wonder what it could be that chased away those spooked that congregation of animals there. And perhaps the elephant. That elephant looks very relaxed over there. Maybe that you can see. Okay, maybe that elephant is not as relaxed as what we initially thought. He's flicking his head around. And that often indicates that they're unhappy about something. If you get too close to an elephant, they might flap their ears by flicking their head vigorously. So perhaps that elephant bull is not too happy with the presence of the other animals around. So Roger is asking, which animal would you say needs to be studied more? So Roger, I think normally a lot of funding goes towards research on big five animals, the big and attractive big five animals, but oftentimes we neglect the smaller species and the ones that we don't see very often. So I would say maybe more research or more funding should go towards research on pangolins, which are being poached at exponential rates. So maybe if we know more about their habits and just their feeding behavior and where they occur, that sort of thing, maybe we can do more to create strategies to protect these magnificent little creatures. So let's see what's happening at some of our other locations. These elephants seem to have chased away our nice sighting that we had earlier. Okay, so now we're back at Tau Game Lodge, Madikwe Game Reserve. We have a waterbuck to the left, and some zebra and wildebeest in the background. And of course some elephants in the front here. So Brian says, my notable observation was the sighting of a python at Tembe. Serpents are rarely visible at waterholes. So that is a very cool sighting, Brian. I was fortunate enough to see a python when I was doing a boat cruise on the Blyder Dam close to Hoedspruit, and we saw a python nestled between the rocks, and that was very special to see, a very large python. And of course the females get much larger than the males because they're the ones that have to bear the young, so that's one sure way of telling the difference between a male and a female. The females get much larger. But I love snakes, so which I guess is not a very popular thing to like, but I do really enjoy snakes. I just think they're incredible creatures, how they can survive without any limbs and be such effective hunters, and of course they're very important in controlling rodent populations and other vermin. And Brian, I wouldn't say that, well, they are definitely rarely visible, but there's definitely always lots of snakes around the water holes. I guess we're just not very good at spotting them because they're just very well hidden. So often you would find pythons close to water, so they are quite water dependent, because it's much easier to move their big sluggish bodies with water. Now of course we have some Egyptian geese here in the foreground, just to the right of our screens, and they have definitely one of the biggest attitudes in the bush. And so what's interesting is that they're actually not geese, but they're in fact ducks. So they're closely related to shell ducks. So the name definitely gives a misidentification of what the bird actually is. You can see those wildebeest there shaking their heads, trying to perhaps dislodge those annoying larvae of the botflies, or the istrid flies. So those botflies can also lay their eggs in the flesh of humans sometimes. So Riley's asking, what is the smallest snake one can find in Africa? So you get these small burrowing snakes called blind snakes or thread snakes. So the smallest of the snakes that you find, they're tiny, they look almost like earthworms, but a little bit bigger than, or a little bit thicker than earthworms, but they are the smallest snakes that you find in Africa. I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but in Africa, definitely very, very tiny snakes. So, Melanistic Marble, who's been a member for the past year, says, I remember Ben had a sighting of a leopard at Rosie's Pan, which was a favorite. I also loved seeing Tammy's cubs and the black eagle nest. So, I was actually thinking earlier, I've seen 4 of the big 5 on the show, but I haven't seen a leopard yet, so that's a very, very exciting sighting that you had over there, Melanistic Marble. And also Tammy's cubs, I can see, was definitely a highlight for most people, and or Tammy's cubs being born. And then of course the black eagle's nest, which I think it's sort of unprecedented, being able to see live an eagle's nest. I don't think anyone has been able to see that before, so I think that's a very special opportunity to view the behavior of black eagles, and especially see what goes on when we're not able to view their nests. So very, very cool. Thank you for sharing, Melanistic Marble. So Rose is asking, why do you often see zebras and wildebeest together? So thanks for the question, Rose. Basically, zebra, they like to eat taller grasses, and they're not too selective about which grasses they eat. So they're what we refer to as bulk grazers. And so the wildebeests are more selective grazers. They eat shorter grasses and are more particular about which grasses they eat. So it helps the wildebeest if the zebra are able to mow the grass a bit shorter, and then so the wildebeest can access those shorter and nicer grasses. And then of course the added vigilance, so more ears and eyes looking out for any potential danger. And see, these elephants are just picking out pieces of mud and throwing it on their bodies, using their trunk like a fifth limb, using it like an arm. Okay, let's see what's happening at KwaMarentan in Pilanesberg. Let's see if we have something exciting in store for us. Okay, so we're in Pilanesberg National Park right now, close to Sun City. which is a holiday resort in the northwest province of South Africa. And I was actually there not too long ago, and it's quite incredible the wildlife you see even in the holiday resort. Some banded mongoose, some baboons busy causing some hassles, and some vervet monkeys. Lots of wildlife. So definitely lots of exciting sightings to see. You can see this elephant in the foreground just loosening up some soil, perhaps trying to grab some grasses over there, loosen the grass, and then they will just eat the grass, so they use their feet to kind of break off all the soil and the dirt from the roots of the grass. So Tabo was asking, is that water in a wetland? So it would look like a kind of wetland. I'm not entirely sure, but you can see that there's a lot of plants that you would generally find, a lot of reeds and some aquatic plants that you would find, which is typical of a wetland. But I think this is just a normal water hole. So I don't think it's, strictly speaking, a wetland. You can see this elephant in the middle here doesn't have a tusk. Maybe they lost it in a fight, or sometimes they're even born without tusks. They lack that gene which codes for the tusk, and maybe it's an evolutionary response, maybe because the elephants in some areas don't need the tusks as much. But okay, there you can see this bull has a tusk on the right hand side of its face. I love elephants, they're just such magnificent creatures. They can be incredibly gentle, yet they can be very feisty, defending their young when fighting for females. An elephant bull and must is definitely an elephant you want to avoid, because their testosterone levels are 60 to 100 times higher than normal levels. So that you can imagine.
My name is Amy, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently.
Even a hyena coming into the action as well now. Oh my word! She's stalking the hyena now. Leopard, hyena, lion, all together in one shot. Oh. Whoa. This is action-packed.
I get to wake up every morning and go out there and look for cats. I get to create my everyday safari for myself. Myself, I grew up in the sort of central eastern suburbs of Johannesburg, fully qualified trails guide and a fully qualified nature conservationist. I love the wild places. I love being in the wilderness. It's probably one of the best jobs I've ever had and probably ever could have.
Every week, the wilderness delivers.
And that's why we're here.
Drama, chaos, crimes, humour. All moments you'll never forget. We've counted them down, argued about them, and finally picked the very best. From rare sightings to classic bush showdowns, this is nature's weekly highlight reel. Sharp facts, bad jokes, and the wildest top 5 you'll see this side of the savannah. It's not just a show, it's a wild bush week.
If you love watching Wild Earth, here's a little tip. You'll gain access to the channel ad-free. You can rewind and rewatch sightings and gain access to our live Tuesday safaris. There's also behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and every safari live episode, whenever it suits you. It's just the best way to connect with nature.
They continuously grow throughout their lives, but once the tusk has been broken off at the root or at the base, then they cannot grow back. Kind of like our teeth. Once we've got our permanent teeth, once we've lost our baby teeth and permanent teeth grow out, then once we lose our permanent tooth, then we cannot grow them back, so we have to get false teeth. So Tabo was asking, are there fishes that live in that water? And so yes, there are. I'd imagine there's probably some catfish, some barbel, and you'd also have some tilapia. So there are a couple of freshwater fish that you'd find in those waterholes that we see. So we have a question here from Susan. Susan says that she missed the chance the other day. When an animal swallows the cud, how does it get to the other stomach? After all, they swallow other food and water. Susan. So basically what happens is there's these contractions, muscular contractions called peristalsis in the stomachs. that giraffe, I'm assuming you're referring, if I can remember correctly, I think you were asking about the giraffes the other day and how the food, the cud moves around. But basically, it happens in humans as well, called peristalsis, but it's basically muscles which move around and basically push and pull the bolus of food, or that ball of food, down the esophagus of the giraffe, and then of course through the different stomach chambers. So Rose is asking how much water does an elephant drink in a day? So elephants can quite happily drink 200 liters of water in a day, and it all depends on conditions. So if it's very dry, they might need a bit more water than normal, because they do get a lot of the moisture from the vegetation they eat, especially during the wetter seasons. The leaves and the grass that they eat contains a lot of moisture, so they don't need to drink water as regularly. So it's quite remarkable that elephants are also able to eat an elephant bull can eat up to 300 kilograms of plant material in a day. And you can imagine that all that food has to go somewhere once it's digested. So an elephant bull can also excrete 150 kilograms of feces in a day, of dung. So of course that dung, as I've mentioned in other shows, is very valuable to keep the soil nice and fertile, and because elephants eat a lot of different plants and they eat the fruits of lots of different plants, they are very important in dispersing the seeds of many different plant species.
Oh, wow.
At Wild Earth, we believe every story has the power to create change. That's why we've launched the Wild Earth Impact Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to conservation and social impact. By showcasing conservation stories, we can change lives, protect nature, and empower communities. We have partnered with Empowers Africa to accept tax-deductible donations from US donors. Your donation will help fund critical programs that support our mission. Join us and be part of the change.
Greatest wildlife spectacle on planet Earth. We'll see you there.
Out here, every moment counts. As a Wild Earth explorer, you won't miss a thing. Watch the Wild Earth channel ad-free 24/7 and rewind if you want to catch something again. Enjoy behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and early access to travel offers. It's the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
Yes, they are able to give birth to two babies at the same time. So Wesley is asking what my go-to bush story would be, and I think my sort of most fascinating sort of story about nature or wildlife, especially in the savannah, is that rhinos, they create these large middens, so it's areas where they frequent to defecate, so they poo in the same areas, and which is kind of like a beacon to mark their territory. So they defecate along the boundary of their territory, and so these middens attract a lot of dung beetles, and so some of these dung beetles, they create excavations underneath the dung or underneath the midden, and so eventually so much soil is removed from underneath the midden that it creates a sort of indentation in the ground. And then basically what happens is when it's very wet in the rainy season, then that little indentation will fill with water, and then it will attract wildlife like warthog, for example, which will then wallow in the mud in that little indentation or little water patch. And then as they wallowing, they basically collect a lot of mud on their bodies. So they remove some more mud from the little water puddle, shall I say. And so with time and with bigger species, the puddle gets bigger and bigger until eventually it becomes a waterhole, much like this one. So once a warthog has been there and removed some of the mud, then some bigger species are able to wallow in that mud, like a buffalo, and then eventually rhinos would wallow there, and elephants. So then just more and more soil gets removed, and then that's how a kind of natural waterhole would form. So Wildlife Lady says that their favorite sighting was seeing the cheetah at Tau. So definitely there's a handful of sightings which were very memorable for everyone. So definitely seeing the cheetahs and of course the wild dogs at Rosie's Pan. So those were the standout ones. So let's see what's going on at Moela Lodge. Okay, looks like we're now at Moela Lodge in Botswana. We have lots of zebra and a couple of elephants. You can see this is a great water course. It is now dried up because of course it's been winter and the spring or summer rains are yet to come. So this little waterhole here is what's left of the mighty Otete rivers. So definitely the competition for water and for your turn at the water hole would be a lot more fearsome during these drier periods. But seeing as these elephants are not too worried about drinking at the moment, they're allowing the zebra a chance to enjoy the water. So Brian is saying, sometimes I wish I possessed the extraordinary ability to communicate with animals, akin to Dr. Doolittle's fictional talent, allowing me to decipher their behaviors and vocalizations. Thank you for sharing that, Brian. I also wish I had that ability. I think it would be an amazing ability, especially as a guide. You could kind of predict what's going to happen before it happens and impress your guests. But I think you would definitely be utilized as a researcher of sorts, and I think you'd be paid a lot of money for your abilities or your superpowers. But of course we're finding out more and more about your behavior, especially on shows like this where we have sort of 24-hour surveillance of what happens with these animals and how they behave. So it's very, very interesting, and I think a lot of valuable research can come out of these shows, and I'm sure some people are using this as an opportunity to gain some insights into the animal's behavior and their habits and what they like and what they don't like. But I can say, at least for most animals that you find in the African savanna, they're normally quite good at giving you an indication when they're upset by something. So elephants, they tend to make themselves look bigger. They throw objects at whatever is threatening them. If you get too close to an elephant, you'll definitely know about it. If it's not trumpeting very loudly, trying to intimidate you with its loud vocalizations, then it will be trying to intimidate you by having its ears spread out and with its head up and trunk up to make itself look more imposing. And then lions, of course, also, they like to snarl and show their teeth and also growl, and much like a cat, a domestic cat, you'll know when a lion is unhappy. And the same goes for leopards. They're quite similar in their displays of annoyance, much like the lion. Oh, I see we've got some ostriches in the background. Wow. The largest flightless bird in the world. Oh, that's very, very cool to see. I'll count about 3, 4, I think there's about 5. Oh, there's more. So ostriches, they're herbivores, so they eat a lot of plant material, but they've also been known to eat rocks, which then aid in their digestion. They're quite peculiar feeding habits or feeding strategy by the bird. So the rock basically helps to grind down the plant material which they eat, because their digestive juices aren't very strong, able to wear down the plant material as well as the rockwood. So please remember to keep those questions and comments coming. Remember, this is an interactive show, so if you want to see your name on the screen and get some recognition, perhaps send your comments through, please. Beautiful scenes here at Moela Lodge. Lots and lots of different animal species about. It's not in too many places where you can see such an interesting combination, or shall I say congregation of animals as we see here. So there's some of the best game viewing, I'd say, in Africa, in Botswana. Botswana is also home to the largest population of elephants in the world. Over 100,000 strong. And you can see there's no shortage of zebra or wildebeest either in Botswana. I see it looks like there's some, is it some vultures in the tree over there? Perhaps. Or maybe, no, that looks like, I can't really decipher what that is, but perhaps an eagle of some sort, bird of prey. But seeing as we can't get a great visual of this bird, let's see what's happening at the safari hook. Okay, now we're at Safari Hook in Namibia. We have some elephants enjoying the water in the midday heat. Very, very hot there in Namibia at the moment. Looking earlier and it looks like it's over 35 degrees there, close to Safari Hook. So definitely lovely opportunity for the elephants to bathe in the water. I see we have a question from Ben over here. Ben is asking, what role should global powers play in funding and supporting African conservation? So that's a very good question, Ben. I think if, of course, global powers, they generally have a lot more money to spend, and a lot of that money could go towards funding anti-poaching initiatives in Southern Africa, because of course we have a huge problem with rhino poaching in South Africa in particular, and then ivory poaching is a big problem in East Africa. So definitely if they could send some money our way for some anti-poaching initiatives, I think that would be fantastic. That we can spend more money on the latest anti-poaching security. So maybe spend some more money on communications between the different anti-poaching units. Maybe some more money for surveillance equipment, and more money to employ more people on the ground to do patrols. But definitely, I think if we're able to protect our wildlife through these sorts of initiatives, and then of course rehabilitation programs. I know that there's some organizations doing very important work around the Hoedspruit area. And I think if we could spend more money on perhaps conservation of vultures, I think that would.
What does it take to handle the wild? Balance. Determination. Focus. and gear that can take a beating so you don't have to.
That is brilliant.
Ria, you say the best kind of roadblock? Absolutely. Look at this.
Hello, girls.
Conservation organizations, and so I think if they can just support the existing organizations, then that would be fantastic. So Bush Baby is asking, what behavioral shifts have giraffes shown in response to lion predation hotspots? So I'd imagine the lion predation hotspots would be around waterholes and around rivers, river courses, and so I'd imagine those lions, they hang out in those areas because it's a lot easier to, when the prey comes to you. So I think in some cases giraffes wouldn't be able to avoid going to the waterhole, although giraffes, because of their browsing or their eating habits, where they eat a lot of leaves from trees, they get a lot of their moisture from these leaves and the vegetation, so they don't need to visit the waterhole as regularly as, let's say, a zebra or a wildebeest or perhaps a waterbuck, but they do eventually have to go there. So maybe the giraffe will move to another area where there's maybe less lions, but that's a good question, and one which you'd only be able to know the answer to if you did a proper sort of study on the distribution change of the giraffe in relation to the lion population or the lion distribution. So you could probably map that out if you use maybe data that you collect from these cameras at the waterholes. Then you can maybe use that data to see when the giraffes are seen and when the lions are seen, and then you can mark it down and maybe sort of map the temporal or the time distribution of the two different species. So let's see what's happening at Old Donyo, as there's not too much happening over here at the moment. Okay, so it looks like we have some oryx, some fringe-eared oryx, the giraffe busy drinking some water, and the young zebra looks a bit unsure of itself.
let's go and take a look. See you out there.
The Wild Earth Impact Foundation is a non-profit that uses the power of wildlife storytelling as a force for good. We create sustainable development projects that showcase conservation stories, empower people, and inspire environmental action. As a registered South African PBO, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Wild Earth Impact Foundation. To find out more, visit our website.
The bush, full of beauty, wonder, and absolute chaos. And now, all that madness has its own show. It's called a Wild Bush Week. The countdown of the most outrageous, heart-stopping, and sometimes downright ridiculous wildlife moments of the week. Lions throwing their weight around. Hyenas gate-crashing the buffet. Leopards doing, well, leopardy things. Each week, it's a fresh reel of safari gold. A mix of drama,
She's just got an impala, everybody.
danger, and a healthy dose of laughter. So, if you fancy a highlight show with bite, and I don't mean just the animals, tune in to a Wild Bush Week. You bring the tea, and we'll bring the tusks, tails, and teeth.
So Andy says, if lions could audition for a Broadway musical, what role would the king of the savannah snag? And how would their pride's backup dancers steal the show with synchronized stalking? So that's a very interesting imagination you have there, Andy. I'm not quite sure which role the king of the savannah would snag, but they do love the attention. I've noticed on safaris they love the cameras and they always pose nicely for the cameras, so they would definitely want to be front and center of a Broadway musical. I'd imagine the lions would. And so my star sign is a Leo. So, and supposedly Leos, they like attention. So I definitely do like a bit of attention, but not too much. So let's see what's happening at Simbavati. Seeing as there's not too much happening here. Quite interesting seeing this herd of elephants, all different shapes and sizes. It's almost like they have a young one in between each of the bigger ones. Maybe that's a deliberate sort of strategy to protect the younger calves of the herd. And so you can see those massive ears. And as I mentioned before, they use those massive ears of theirs to dissipate heat. And those ears cover about 20% of the skin of their bodies. So they use those ears to channel sounds so they can hear a lot better than most animal species. They've got an incredible sense of hearing. And then of course, as I mentioned, they use them to cool themselves off or to dissipate the heat in their bodies. And they also use them when they're communicating with one another. So they do a lot of their communication through their ears. So either keeping the ears pinned up or flapping the ears or spreading them out. So lots of different uses for the ears. So Vicky's got a nice joke over here for us. Why did the lion break up with his girlfriend? She was always lying about her feelings. Thanks, Vicky. I think it's only appropriate that I share a joke with you, seeing as you were so kind as to share one with us. So, what is a reptile's favorite film? The Lizard of Oz. So yeah, please keep those jokes and the comments and the questions coming in. We do love to hear from you. So here's another wildlife joke for you. Did you hear about the emu that grew up so big that it was shunned by the rest of its group? It was ostrich-sized. So it's always good to break up the seriousness with a bit of humor. I know it definitely helps me a lot with nerves and that if I'm able to laugh at myself and not take myself so seriously. So why was the leopard always calm during hunts? He knew how to stay spot on and chill. You can see that elephant was blocking our view over there. Maybe he was a bit jealous that he wasn't catching as much shine as the rest of them. So besides the ears picking up on a lot of different sounds, the elephants are also able to detect vibrations and communicate through their feet. So perhaps you've heard sometimes how elephants, they give this low sort of grumble, and so that grumble can be detected through the vibrations in the ground with the feet of the elephant. So BBC says don't give up the day job. I'm assuming that's because of the jokes I was telling. I hope it's not because of my poor presenting abilities, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, BBC, and say it's because you didn't enjoy my joke. But thank you, BBC. So what's also quite interesting about elephants is they're one of the few mammal species which aren't able to jump. So they can swim quite well, obviously walk very well, and they can run, but they can't jump. So they don't have that ability because their legs or their feet, it's almost like they're standing on their tippy toes, the way their bones are structured in their legs. And so, I mean, you can imagine how difficult it would be to jump if you're standing on your tippy toes. So yeah, that's another interesting fact about elephants, that they aren't able to jump. But they are able to stand on their hind legs to get to perhaps a fruit or some leaves on the top of a tree. So Nara shared a joke with us. What do you call a lion with a carrot in each ear? Anything you want, he can't hear you. Thank you for sharing that, Nara. So Rose says, why was the baby snake sad? Because someone took its rattle. Thank you, Rose. I appreciate that. So Sharon Kutzer is saying, always good to see these animals so relaxed in their natural habits or habitat. So it is very, very nice to see. The elephants always look super chilled when they're at the waterhole, or generally. And I think they also don't have too much to fear. There's not too much that preys on elephants, besides maybe a very courageous lion which might try to take down an elephant calf. But other than that, humans would be another predator of elephants. But besides humans and lions, not much else is brave enough to try and take down an elephant. Of course, on foot, elephants can be quite dangerous if you spook them or if they feel threatened. And so humans can't outrun an elephant because elephants are able to run about 40 kilometers per hour, which is quite a bit faster than a human is able to run. So they would easily be able to catch you, and if they get their hands on you or their feet on you, then I think it's tickets. They trample you or perhaps use their tusk on you. We don't stand much of a chance against an elephant. So Mayesh SA says, lovely to see elephants at the waterhole. Very picturesque. Definitely, all these locations are super picturesque, and it's just so beautiful to see all the different locations and the different scenes and all the different animal congregations. Very, very special indeed. Another interesting thing about elephants is that they're one of the few species which are quite self-aware. They've done experiments on elephants where they were able to see whether the elephant was able to recognize itself in the mirror. And so yes, the elephants were able to recognize when the researchers drew a white cross on the face of an Asian elephant. The elephant used its trunk to point out where the cross was in its reflection. And the only other animals which are able to do that are chimpanzees and dolphins and magpies. So that's quite fascinating that these elephants are super, super intelligent. Way more than we give them credit for.
Best sighting I've presented. I found myself with wild dogs. We chased the dogs around, chased them around. They ate an impala. We got the end of that. Then another impala went into Gowrie Dam down the road there, and the wild dogs went around. Eventually the impala came close to the bank. One wild dog went and grabbed it and then just pulled it out and just did what wild dogs do. It was an emotional experience, but it was very, very special.
There's some ellies that we're approaching now.
The light on her as well is absolutely gorgeous.
So we are going to enjoy the rest of this sunset.
Wow, this is absolutely crazy.
And thank you for joining us. For myself and Cam, we will see you next time.
Out here, every wild moment matters, and as a Wild Earth explorer, you won't miss a thing. Watch the Wild Earth channel, ad-free 24/7, where you can even rewind and watch something again. Get access to behind-the-scenes videos, fireside chats, and access to early travel offers. It is the best way to stay connected and be part of the Wild Earth family.
So we often see many of the same sort of species during our shows, or live at the waterhole shows, but there's a lot of species which we don't see. Some nocturnal animals and some crepuscular animals, so animals which are more active during dusk and dawn, in those periods where it's semi-dark, semi-light. And so I think I'll elaborate on it a bit more during my next show, but I think it's quite a nice thing to think about all the species that we don't see on the show. So we have seen on the show, we've seen lions and hyena, but they're obviously a lot more active at night time, being nocturnal animals. Of course, we have seen a leopard on the show before, but can you think of some of the other nocturnal animals or other species which we don't typically see on the show? Like bush babies, honey badgers, maybe genets. So this is another form of what we refer to as resource partitioning. So dividing up the resource either through space or time, and so some of the animals, they use the same resource but at different times to avoid competition. Kind of like cheetahs being diurnal, meaning they're active during the day, and so they're normally active and they're hunting during the day to avoid competition with the many other predators which are active at night time, like the lions, leopards, hyenas. So that's an example of resource partitioning or temporal partitioning. You can see the elephants giving us a little demonstration of what I was speaking about earlier, how they headbutt one another and push each other around, do a bit of a wrestling to practice for when they're all grown up and having to defend themselves. Okay, so let's see what's happening at Mantis Founders Lodge in the Eastern Cape. Wow, look at the white rhino that we have here. That's always special. I really enjoy seeing these white rhinos happy and healthy. And unfortunately it has to have that tag on its wrist or ankle, because it's very important that they monitor these white rhino because they're very threatened because of poaching activities. They, as I was mentioning in yesterday's show, they unfortunately killed for their horns, and of course the horns are incredibly valuable in some countries where they believe that it can be used as a cure for fevers, for hangovers, or as an aphrodisiac, and also as a status symbol, as a symbol of power. If you are in possession of a rhino horn, then you're seen as a very powerful individual. So it's important, as I think someone was asking earlier, what the powers. Ooh, look at this little interaction here. They're having a bit of a disagreement. I think perhaps the one on the right is upset with something the one on the left did. Perhaps, or we don't know, maybe something happened earlier, maybe another interaction happened. So I'm not quite sure why they're having. Maybe it's a dominance display. Maybe the one looks like it's a female on the right, and maybe a male to the left. Maybe this female is being overly protective of her calf. See, this mother isn't backing down, but the calf doesn't seem to understand what's really going on. It's very relaxed, but looks like they're having a bit of a face-off, these two in picture. So you can see, if you look at the ears of the mother to the right, you can see her ears are pointing backwards, much like when a dog is ooh, wow, sure. You can see they're pinning the ears back, much like an elephant would when it's ready to charge. So maybe that mother is just giving a fair warning to that male there, just to let him know who's in charge actually at this waterhole. Quite a cool interaction over there. A bit of something different for us. So Kathy says mantis must have a very active anti-poaching unit. Imagine they would, definitely, because especially to air this on live TV, I think it's quite risky, but obviously they are confident in their abilities to protect the rhinos, because I think probably most people would know that you find rhinos, if you just look on their website, that the rhinos occur on Mantis Founders Lodge, but perhaps they don't know at which times the rhinos would be at the waterhole. So it's definitely, I imagine they would have a very strong anti-poaching unit. So Stephanus, nature is saying, if someone is not prepared to inhale or eat hair and nails, why do they use rhino horn? So Stephanus, I think that's the $1 million question. Unfortunately, this tradition of some of the cultures in Southeast Asia of consuming rhino horn as a medicine is something that's so deeply entrenched in the culture. Sorry, I'm laughing at this Egyptian goose that's now in picture. I was talking about how they've got the big attitudes, and you can see this particular goose as being a bit cheeky. So sorry, to carry on answering your question, Stephanus. So the consumption and the use of the horn as a medicine is so deeply entrenched in some cultures that it's very difficult to change the mindset. So that's part of why educating people on what exactly rhino horn is, and that it doesn't have medicinal uses, is so incredibly important. So, but unfortunately, the people that should be hearing it don't always hear these facts and this information. So.
We'll see you out on the safari.
It could be a very exciting morning.
Oh, she's gonna catch it.
Come on, Tommy.
Watch this, we're about to see a kill.
You can see how close he is from where I am.
Safari, wine, and waterfalls. The ultimate African adventure. Sip South Africa's finest wines. Experience a world-class safari among Africa's iconic wildlife. And stand in front of Victoria Falls, one of the natural wonders of the world. All this can be yours with Wild Earth Travel, where Africa comes alive.
Enjoying the water. It's a pleasant 29 degrees Celsius over there, but I can imagine it probably feels a bit hotter in that direct exposure to the sun. Of course, Old Donyo being in Kenya, Kenya is much closer to the equator. You have the direct sunlight where the sun doesn't really shine at an angle. So imagine that the UV radiation is very intense over there. So they're constantly having to add a layer of mud or some protective sunscreen into their bodies. Okay, let's, while we're watching and enjoying these elephants to be busy bathing themselves and throwing themselves at the water, splashing about, I just want to say thank you very much for your comments and questions today. It's been very fun to be on the show. I really enjoyed interacting with everyone and hearing about your favorite sightings. And I'm looking forward to the next one.